Good morning, students. Welcome to 7th Standard Social Science revision class. So, it's revision time. Let's open our revision book for Unit Test 3. So, children, the portions for Unit Test 3 are History Second Lesson, Emergence of New Kingdoms in North India, and Geography Second Lesson, Landforms. So, in this class, we can revise one by one. So, let's start our revision. So, first, History Second Unit, Emergence of New Kingdoms in North India. In this lesson, we have seen about the origin of Rajputs, the Pratiharas, the Palas, the Chauhans, the contribution of Rajputs to art and architecture, advent of Islam, Muhammad of Ghazni, and Muhammad of Ghori. So let's revise one by one. So first one is origin of Rajputs. So from where the Rajput word is derived means the word Rajput is derived from the Sanskrit word Rajputra, which means succession of the royal blood. So the word Rajput is derived from the Sanskrit word Rajputra, which means succession of royal blood. So make a note of it. It may be asked in one word. Then there are totally 36 Rajput clans were listed by Oriental scholar James Todd in AD CE 1829. So according to an Oriental scholar James Todd, there are totally 36 Rajput clans. Among them, 4 claimed a special status. So among the 36, 4 was a prominent dynasties. First one is the Pratiharas, the Chauhans, the Chalukyas. So this Chalukyas is different from the Deccan Chalukyas known as Solankis and the Paramaras of Pavas. So these 4 are the Rajput clans which claimed a special status. So now let's see the mind map for Pratiharas. So the Pratihara dynasty was founded by Harichandra. So Harichandra, he laid the foundation for Pratihara dynasty. Followed him Nagabhata I. So Nagabhata I was the most prominent ruler among the Pratiharas. Then after Nagabhata I, Vatsaraja succeeded the throne, and then Nagabhata II, and then Rambhadra. So these 3 were inefficient. Then Rambhadra's son Mihara Bhoja was the most prominent ruler in the Pratiharas. So children, Pratihara dynasty was founded by Harichandra. Harichandra was succeeded by Nagabhata I, and then Vatsaraja, Nagabhata II, Rambhadra and his son Mihara Bhoja was considered to be the most powerful ruler in the Pratiharas. So next, let's see the mind map for Palas. The Pala dynasty was founded by Gopala. So Gopala laid the foundation for Pala dynasty. He was succeeded by his son Dharmapala. So Dharmapala was the founder of Vikramashila University. Then Dharmapala was succeeded by his son Devapala. So both Dharmapala and Devapala were a great patron towards Buddhism. After Devapala, the kingdom was ruled by 5 insignificant rulers. Then Mahipala I succeeded the throne. Hence, Mahipala was known as the founder of second Pala dynasty. So children, I hope you are clear with this. So make a note of this. Pala dynasty was founded by Gopala. Dharmapala was the founder of Vikramashila University. Then Devapala. So both Dharmapala and Devapala were a great patron towards Buddhism. Then Mahipala I was considered to be the founder of second Pala dynasty because before Mahipala there were 5 insignificant rulers. So I hope you are clear. So now let's move on to Muhammad of Ghazni, the time period between AD 997 to 1030. Muhammad is said to have conducted 17 raids into India. The initial raid were against the Shahi kingdom. in which its king Jayapala was defeated in 1001. After his defeat, Jayapala immolated himself because he thought that this defeat was a disgrace. So, Muhammad of Ghazni, he entered into India 17 times and he plundered the wealth of India. The initial raid, that is the first raid of Muhammad of Ghazni, were against the Shahi kingdom. So at that time, Shahi kingdom was ruled by King Jayapala. So Muhammad of Ghazni defeated him in 1001. Then Jayapala immolated himself, means he killed himself because he thought that this defeat was a disgrace. Then after Jayapala, his son Anandapala succeeded the throne. So after Jayapala, his son Anandapala succeeded the throne. Muhammad of Ghazni, he defeated Anandapala also. Anandapala fought against Muhammad, but Anandapala was defeated in the Battle of Vaihind near Peshawar in 1008. So Anandapala also fought against Muhammad of Ghazni, but he was defeated in the battle called Battle of Vaihind near Peshawar in the year 1008. The subsequent raids of Muhammad into India were aimed at plundering the rich temples and the cities of North India. So the main motive of Muhammad of Ghazni is to plunder. Plunder means to steal the wealth of the North India. In 1018, Muhammad plundered the holy city of Madura. Muhammad returned with enormous riches. So Muhammad returned to Afghanistan with enormous riches, which he plundered from India. His next important raid took place in Gujarat in 1024 AD. Muhammad marched from Multan across Rajputana and defeated the Solanki king Bhimadeva I. Then Muhammad is said to have sacked the famous temple of Somnath. Muhammad died in the year 1030 AD. So I hope you are clear with Muhammad of Ghazni. So now let's move on to Muhammad of Ghori. After the death of Muhammad of Ghazni, Muhammad Ghori became independent and taking advantage of the decline of Ghaznavid Empire, Muhammad Ghori brought Ghazni under his control. So after the death of Muhammad of Ghazni, Muhammad of Ghori, he took the Ghaznavid Empire under his control. Then, unlike Muhammad of Ghazni, he wanted to extend his empire by conquering India. So, Muhammad of Ghazni main motive is to plunder the wealth of India. But Muhammad of Ghori motive is to conquer India. That is to capture the India. So now let's move on to the Chauhans. The Chauhans ruled between AD 956 and 1192 over the eastern parts of present-day Rajasthan, establishing their capital at Sakambari. So, Chauhans, they ruled between the time period of 956 and 1192. They ruled the present-day Rajasthan area and their capital was Sakambari. This Rajput dynasty was founded by Simharaji, who was popularly known as the founder of city of Ajmer. So the Chauhan dynasty was founded by Simharaji. He is called the founder of the city of Ajmer. So children, make a note of it. The founder of the city of Ajmer is Simharaji. So now let's move on to the history of Prithviraj Chauhan. There is a long epic poem called Prithviraj Raso composed by Chand Bardai a few centuries later. So children, the Prithviraj Raso was composed by Chand Bardai, and in this we can know about the epic story of the most prominent ruler in the Chauhan dynasty, that is Prithviraj Chauhan. Prithviraj rose to the occasion and defeated Muhammad of Ghori in the Battle of Tarain near Delhi in 1191 AD. This was called the First Battle of Tarain. So in the First Battle of Tarain, Prithviraj defeated Muhammad of Ghori. To avenge this defeat, Muhammad made a serious preparation and gathered a huge army. He arrived with his large force in Lahore via Peshawar and Multan. He sent a message to Prithviraj asking him to acknowledge his supremacy and become a Muslim. But Prithviraj rejected the proposal and prepared his army to resist the invader. Many Hindu kings and chiefs also joined them. In the ensuing Second Battle of Tarain in 1192, Muhammad thoroughly routed the army of Prithviraj, who was captured and killed. So children, in the First Battle of Tarain in 1191 AD, Prithviraj defeated Muhammad of Ghori. In order to take revenge, he made a serious preparation and he again returned to India. And in the Second Battle of Tarain in 1192 AD, Muhammad of Ghori, he defeated Prithviraj and he captured him and he killed him. Then, after the death of Muhammad of Ghori in 1206 AD, his most capable general Qutb-ud-Din Aibak, who had been left behind in India, took control of Muhammad's territories in India and declared himself as the first Sultan of Delhi. So after the death of Muhammad of Ghori in 1206 AD, he left a slave to rule the Muhammad's territories in India. So his name is Qutb-ud-Din Aibak. So after the death of Muhammad of Ghori, he declared himself as the first Sultan of Delhi. So children, make a note of it. Qutb-ud-Din Aibak is known as the first Sultan of Delhi. So now let's move on to the contribution of Rajputs to art and architecture. A specific style of Rajput paintings, often focusing on religious themes, emerged at Rajput courts. Their style of painting is called Rajasthani paintings. So children, their style of paintings related to Rajputs is called Rajasthani paintings. So now let's see some of the fine examples of the architecture related to Rajputs. The strong fortress of Chittorgarh, Ranthambore and Kumbhalgarh, all in Rajasthan, Mandu, Gwalior, Chanderi and Asirgarh, all in Madhya Pradesh. So these are all the examples for the architecture of Rajputs. The palaces of Mansingh at Gwalior, the buildings at Amber, Jaipur and the lake palaces at Udaipur. The temples in Khajuraho, the Sun Temple in Konark, the Dilbara Jain Temple constructed in Mount Abu and Kandariya Temple at Madhya Pradesh. So children, these are all the fine examples of the architectural style related to Rajputs. Then the Raksha Bandhan, that is Rakhi tradition, is attributed to Rajputs. Raksha means protection, Bandhan means to tie. It is a festival that celebrates brotherhood and love. Rabindranath Tagore, he started a mass Raksha Bandhan festival during the partition of Bengal in 1905, in which he encouraged Hindu and Muslim women to tie a Rakhi on men from the other community and make them their brothers. So children, who started the mass Raksha Bandhan festival means it's Rabindranath Tagore during the partition of Bengal in 1905. So the main aim is to create a brotherhood with the other communities. Then the contribution of Palas to culture. It was through their missionaries that Buddhism was established in Tibet. The celebrated Buddhist monk Atisha 981 to 1054, who reformed Tibetan Buddhism, was the president of Who is the president of Vikramashila Monastery? The answer is Atisha. Under the Pala patronage, a distinctive school of art arose called Pala art or Eastern India art. So, under the Pala patronage, a distinct art arose called Pala art or Eastern Indian art. So, now let's move on to Advent of Islam. Islam as a religious faith originated at Mecca in Arabia. The founder of Islam was Prophet Muhammad. The followers of Islam are Muslims. So children, Mecca is located at Arabia and the founder of Islam is Prophet Muhammad and the follower of Islams are called Muslims. An Islamic state, especially the one ruled by a single religious and political leader, was known as Caliphate, where Caliph means a representative of Prophet Muhammad. So, an Islamic state is ruled by a single religious as well as political leader known as Caliphate, where Caliph means he is a representative of this Prophet Muhammad. The two early caliphate were Umayyad and Abbasid. So, the two early caliphates were Umayyad and Abbasid. So now let's move on to Arab conquest of Sindh and its impact. In AD 712, Muhammad bin Qasim, who was the commander of the Umayyad kingdom, invaded Sindh. Qasim defeated Dahir, the ruler of Sindh, and killed him in the battle. So, in 712 AD, Muhammad bin Qasim, he is the commander of Umayyad kingdom. So, he defeated Dahir. So, Dahir is the ruler of Sindh and he killed him in the battle. So, what was the impact of this Arab conquest means? Impact means result. The Arab scholars visited Sindh and studied many Indian literary works. They translated many Sanskrit books on astronomy, philosophy, mathematics and medicine into Arabic. So, they translated many books from Sanskrit into Arabic. Then, they learnt the numerals 0 to 9 from India. Until then, the people in the West did not know the use of 0. So, they learned the numerals 0 to 9 from India. It is believed that the people in the West and the Arabs learned the game of chess only from the Indians. So, they learned the game of chess from the Indians. So, these are all the impacts of the Arab conquest. So, now let's see what is the most expected questions in this lesson. So, children, for one words, you can follow the worksheet. So, here I am going to share only the detail and 2 marks. So, first question is, write about the tri-party struggle over Kannauj. So, this is the most important question in this lesson. There was a prolonged tri-party struggle between the Gurjara Pratiharas of Malwa, the Rashtrakutas of Deccan and the Palas of Bengal, as each one of them wanted to establish their supremacy over the fertile region of Kannauj. In the process, all the 3 powers were weakened. So children, tri-party struggle means the Gurjara Pratiharas, the Rashtrakutas and the Palas. They wanted to bring the Kannauj under their control. So they fought a 200 years war. So in the course period of war, all the 3 powers got vanished. The second question, name any 4 Rajput clans. And the answer is the Pratiharas, the Chauhans, the Chalukyas and the Paramaras of Pavas. So children, you can write this, the Pratiharas, the Chauhans, the Chalukyas and the Paramaras of Pavas. So totally there are 36 Rajput clans but only 4 claimed a special status. Third question, who was the founder of Pala dynasty? So as we have seen earlier, so Gopala, who founded the Pala dynasty, it did not have any royal antecedents. That is, it didn't have any ancestors in the royal kingdom. He was elected by the people for his superior capabilities. So Gopala was elected by the people. So he is the founder of Pala dynasty. The fourth question, mention the first two early caliphates. So the answer is, the two early caliphates were Umayyads and Abbasid. Umayyad and Abbasid. Fifth question, name the ruler of Sindh who was defeated by Qasim. In 712 AD, Muhammad bin Qasim, who was the commander of Umayyad kingdom, he invaded Sindh and Qasim defeated Dahir. So this name is very important. So Qasim defeated Dahir, the ruler of Sindh. Next, what was the impact of Arab conquest of Sindh? Point out any 5 points. So children, as we have seen earlier, the Arab scholars, they visited Sindh and they studied many Indian literary works. So whichever point I have underlined, so it is the important point. The Arab scholars, they visited Sindh and they studied many Indian literary works. So not only studied, they translated many Sanskrit books on astronomy, philosophy, mathematics and medicine into Arabic. So they translated the Sanskrit books into Arabic. Then they learned numerals 0 to 9 from the Indians and the usage of 0. And also it is believed that the people in the West and the Arabs learned the game of chess only from the Indians. So these are all the impacts or the results of Arab conquest of Sindh. So I hope you are clear with history. So now let's move on to geography second unit, the landforms. So we have seen about the endogenic process and exogenic process in this lesson. Then the gradation, then weathering, erosion, river, glacier, wind and coast. So river, glacier, wind and coast. So the definition for each. And what are the different types of land formed because of river, glacier, wind and coast erosion. So let's see it one by one. So first let's see what is the difference between the endogenic and exogenic process. The landforms are a result of two processes. So children, we know that the landform of the earth's surface is not uniform. Some places we may find mountains or plateaus or plains, so it is not uniform. So the landforms are resulted because of the two different processes. One is the endogenic process and the other one is the exogenic process. Endo means internal process. So the endogenic process called internal process, which leads to the upliftment and sinking of the earth's surface at several places. Exogenic means external. So exo means external process and it is the continuous wearing down and rebuilding of the land surface. So endo means internal process, exo means external process. So now let's see the definition for gradation. So gradation is a process of leveling of high lands through the erosion and filling up of low lands through the deposition. So the high land will get eroded. Eroded means removal of the layer of the soil, and the low land will get filled up with the soil. So gradation means it is the process of leveling up of high lands through erosion and low lands. So the eroded mud or the eroded particles will get deposited in the low land. So that is called gradation. Then weathering. So weathering means breaking and falling apart into small pieces of the rocks on the earth's surface. So weathering means breaking or falling apart into small pieces. So next, erosion. So the definition for erosion is wearing away of the landscape by different agents in the sense like water, wind, ice and sea waves. The eroded material is carried away by water, wind, etc. So erosion means wearing away. So wearing means removal of the top layer of the soil by different agents like water, wind, ice and sea waves. Then river. So first let's see the definition of river. The water flowing from its source to river mouth along a definite course is called river. So river means the water flowing from the source to the river mouth is called river. Along a definite path, along a particular path is called river. Then the place of origin of river is called its source. So the place where the river start is called source. The place where it joins a lake or a sea or a ocean is known as river mouth. So the starting place is called source, and the place where it ends, that is where it joins the lake or a sea or a ocean, is called river mouth. So children, tributary means a stream or river that flows into and joins a main river. Distributary means the stream that branches off and flows away from the main stream. So tributary means a stream or a river that flows into and joins the main river. Distributary means from the tributary itself it branches off. Then let's move on to the definition of waterfall. Falling of river water over a vertical step in the river bed is called waterfall. So, falling of water in a vertical direction is called waterfall. The highest waterfall is Angel Falls of Venezuela in South America. So, children, make a note of it. The highest waterfall is Angel Falls of Venezuela in South America. Next, plunge pool. So plunge pool is a hollow feature at the base of a waterfall which is formed by cavitation. Alluvial fan is a deposition of sediment occurs at which the river enters a plain or foothills. So plunge pool means, so when the waterfalls flow, the hollow feature at the base of the waterfall formed because of the cavitation is called plunge pool. And near the coastal areas, a sediment formed is called alluvial fan. Then, next important question in this lesson is meanders. As the river enters the plain, it takes twists and turns, forming a large bends known as meanders. So, as the river enters the plains, because of several obstacles in the path, it will take several twists and turns, which resembles like a large bend, and this twist and turns is called meanders. So now let's move on to Oxbow Lake formation. So due to the continuous erosion and deposition along the sides of the meander, the ends of the meander loops come closer to each other. In due course of time, the meander loop cuts off from the river and forms a cut-off lake called Oxbow Lake. So children, due to the continuous erosion and deposition, the meander loops will come close to each other and the meander loops will cut off from the main river and forms a cut-off lake called Oxbow Lake. So I hope you are clear. So now let's see from where the meander word is derived. The term meander has been named on the basis of meander river of Asia Minor Turkey. It flows through numerous curves and turns. So the term meander is named based on the meander river of Asia Minor Turkey. So now let's see about delta. So the velocity of the river becomes so slow that it begins to deposit its load. So as the river comes and joins the sea, the velocity and the speed of the river will get slow and it begins to deposit its load. Each distributary forms its own mouth. The collection of sediments from all the mouths form delta. So the collection of sediments forms delta. The delta are excellent productive lands. So the delta are excellent productive lands suitable for cultivation. They have more minerals which favor cultivation. For example, Kaveri Delta, Ganges Delta and Mississippi Delta. So children, as a river comes to an end, the velocity and the speed of the flow of the river will get minimized, and it results in the deposition of the sediment along the river mouth, and that forms delta, and delta are mineral rich areas which are suitable for cultivation. Now let's move on to glacier. So let's see the definition. A large body of ice moving slowly down a slope or a valley due to gravity is called a glacier. So glacier means a large body of ice moving slowly down because of the gravity is called glacier. So there are two types of glacier. One is the continental glacier. So the glacier covering the vast areas of a continent with thick ice sheets are called continental glacier. For example, Antarctica and Greenland. So Antarctica and Greenland are fully covered with ice. Then mountain or valley glacier. That is, the ice will be covered over the mountains. It is a stream of ice flowing along a valley. It usually flows former river courses and are bounded by steep sides. Example, the Himalayas and the Alps. So now let's see what are the different types of land formed because of glaciers. First one is cirque. So cirque is a glacially eroded rock basin with a steep side wall and a steep head wall surrounding an armchair shaped depression. Example, Corrie, Scotland, United Kingdom, and Carr in Germany. So children, cirque means it is one type of glacier eroded landform. It resembles like a armchair shaped depression. So the formation will resemble like a armchair shaped depression as you see in the picture. So example for cirque are Corrie. So such cirques are found at Corrie, Scotland, and then Carr in Germany. Then the second landform is Tarn Lake. So as the ice melt, they get filled up the cirque with water and become beautiful lakes in the mountains called Tarn Lake. So as we have seen earlier, cirque means it is a armchair shaped depression. So when the ice melt, what happened? The depression will get filled with water. So it resembles like a lake on the mountain. So such lakes are called Tarn Lake. The next landform is arteries. When two adjacent cirques erode towards each other, that is when two cirques they join towards each other, it results in a narrow rocky steep sided ridge called arteries. So I hope you are clear. When two cirques on the adjacent side they join with each other, that is erode with each other, it get transformed into a narrow rocky steep sided ridge called arteries. Now let's move on to wind. An active agent of erosion and deposition in desert is wind. So the landforms resulted in the desert are mainly because of wind. In desert, you can see rocks in a shape of a mushroom, commonly called mushroom rocks. Wind erode the lower section of the rocks more than the upper section. Therefore, such rocks have narrow base and wider top. So, mushroom rocks is one of the landform in the desert caused because of wind erosion. So, the wind erode the lower section more than the upper section. That is, it has a narrow base and a wider top. It resembles the shape of the mushroom. The next landform in desert is Inselbergs, an isolated residual hill standing like a pillar with rounded tops are called Inselbergs. Example, Inselberg in the Kalahari Desert of South Africa. So, Inselberg are the isolated residual hill. Isolated means a single residual hill standing like a pillar in the desert. So, the next important landform in desert is sand dunes. When the wind blows, It lifts and transports sand from one place to another. When it stops blowing, the sand falls and get deposited in low hill-like structures. So these are called sand dunes. So children, when the wind blows, it lifts the sand from one place to another, and then when the wind stops, it falls there and it resembles a small hill-like structure. So that is called sand dunes. And then Burchens. So Burchens are the crescent-shaped sand dunes. So it looks like a half moon shape. So crescent means half moon. So the crescent-shaped sand dunes are called Burchens. The next important landform in desert is loess. When the grains of sand are very fine and light, the wind can carry it over very long distance. So when the sand grains are very light, the wind can carry it over long distance. When such sand is deposited in large areas, then it is called loess, and large deposits of loess are found in China. So this type of landforms are found in China. Next, northern China loess deposits are brought from the Gobi Desert. So the northern China loess deposits are brought from the Gobi Desert. So now let's move on to coast and the different types of landform formed because of the coastal erosion. So first see the definition for coast. A part of the land adjoining or near the sea is called sea coast. The boundary of the coast where the land meets water is called coastal lines. So the land near the sea is called sea coast, and the boundary where the water meets the land is called coastal line. Then, the erosion and deposition of the sea waves give rise to coastal landforms. Sea cliffs are steep rock faces formed when the sea waves dash against them. So, when the sea waves dash against the rock, steep rock faces are formed, and such landforms are called sea cliffs. And then, sea caves. So, continuously, the waves will strike at the rocks and cracks will develop. So continuously the sea waves strike the rocks and the cracks will develop. Over time they become larger and wider. Thus hollow-like caves are formed on the rocks. They are called sea caves. So continuously when the sea waves strike the rocks, the gap between the rocks will become larger and wider. And these hollow-like caves are called sea caves. The next important landform because of coastal erosion is sea arches. As the cavities of the sea caves become bigger and bigger, only the roof of the cave remains. So thus forming sea arch. So it resembles like a arch. And then stacks. Sea stacks. Further erosion, it breaks the roof also. So when the waves strike again and again, the roof also will get broken off and it results like a wall-like features called stack. So these are all the different types of landforms formed because of the sea waves. So next is sandbar. So sandbar is an elongated deposition of sand or mud found in the sea almost parallel to the coast. So sandbar is an elongated deposition of sand or mud in the middle of the sea, almost parallel to the coast. Next, the first longest beach in the world is Miami Beach in South Florida in USA. So children, make a note of it. The first longest beach in the world is Miami Beach in South Florida in USA, and the second longest beach in the world is the Marina Beach in Chennai. So second longest beach is Marina Beach in Chennai. Next is lagoon. So lagoon means a shallow stretch of water partially or completely separated from the sea. Shallow means not deep. So it is not much deep. So lagoon is a shallow stretch of water partially or completely separated from the sea. So such lagoons are found at Shilka Lake in Odisha, Pulicat Lake in Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh, and Vembanad Lake in Kerala are the famous lagoons in India? So children, famous lagoons in India are Chilka Lake in Odisha, Pulicat Lake in Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh, and Vembanad Lake in Kerala. So now let's see what are the most expected questions in this lesson. So the most expected questions are, so children, for one word you can follow the worksheet. So let's see only the 2 marks and detail. So first one is define S erosion means define soil erosion. So erosion is wearing away of the landscape by different agents like water, wind, ice and sea waves. The eroded material is carried away by water, wind, etc. So erosion means wearing away of landscape, that is removal of the top layer of soil. Second question, what is a plunge pool? A plunge pool is a hollow feature at the base of a waterfall which is formed because of cavitation. So plunge pool means a hollow feature. The third question, how are oxbow lakes formed? So due to continuous erosion and deposition along the sides of meander, so meander means what I told? Twist and turns. The ends of the meander loop comes closer and closer. In due course of time, the meander loop cuts off from the river and it forms a cut-off lake, also called an oxbow lake. The fourth question, name the 4 major landforms formed because of glacial erosion. So Cirque, Tarn Lake, Artis and glacial moraines. Then, fifth question, give a note on mushroom rocks. So in desert, you can see rocks in a shape of mushroom, commonly called mushroom rocks. Winds erode the lower section of the rock much more than the upper part. Therefore, such rocks have narrow base and wider top, which resembles the shape of a mushroom. Sixth question, what is a lagoon? Give an example. So lagoon means a shallow stretch of water partially or completely separated from the sea. Shallow means not deep. Example is Chilka Lake in Odisha, Pulicat Lake in Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh, and Vembanad Lake in Kerala are the famous lagoons in India. Then distinguish the following. So the first distinguish is between tributary and distributary. So tributary means a stream or river that flows into and joins a main river. Distributary means a stream that branches off and flows away from the main stream. Example for tributary is Amaravati is the tributary of river Kaveri. And Kolli Dam is the distributary of Kaveri river. The second distinguish is between V-shaped valley and U-shaped valley. So V-shaped valley is formed because of the erosion of rivers and U-shaped valley is formed by lateral and vertical erosion of glaciers. Example of this is Kamban Valley in Tamil Nadu and U-shaped valley example is Leh Valley in Ladakh. Then the third distinguish continental glacier and mountain glacier. So the glacier covering vast areas of a continent with thick sheets of ice are called continental glacier. Whereas mountain glacier means the valley, it is also called valley glacier. And it is a stream of ice flowing along the valley. It usually follows former river courses and are bounded by steep sides. Example for continental glacier are Antarctica and Greenland, and mountain is the Himalayas and the Alps. So now let's move on to give reason. So first one is the ends of the meander loops come closer and closer. So what is the reason for that? The main reason is due to the continuous erosion and deposition along the sides of the meander. The ends of the meander loops come closer and closer. The second is floodplains are very fertile. So why the floodplains are very fertile? At times the river overflows its banks. This leads to flooding of the neighboring areas. As the river floods, it deposits layer of fine soil and other materials called sediment along its banks. This leads to the formation of a flat fertile floodplain. So because of the deposition of the soil material, that is called sediments along the banks, the floodplains are very fertile. Then sea caves are turned into stacks. So give reason how the sea caves are turned into stacks. So for that you have to explain from the sea arches. So as the cavities of the sea caves become bigger and bigger, only the roof of the caves remains, and that is called sea arches. On further erosion, it breaks the roof also and only the wall remains. So these wall-like features are called stacks. Then answer in a paragraph. First question, explain different landforms produced by river erosion. So the answer must be in this format. First, define the river. So give the definition for river and explain the different types of landforms. That is V-shaped valley. Give the definition for waterfall, plunge pool, meander and oxbow lake formation. So already I have explained. So only I have given the side headings. Then the second question, describe the landforms associated with wind. So you can give the definition for wind. So wind is the active agent of erosion in desert. Then define the mushroom rocks, Inselbergs, sand dunes, Batchen and loess. The third question, how are artes formed? So the glaciers erode the landscape by leveling the soil and stones to expose the solid rock below. So Cirque is a glacially eroded rock basin with a steep sidewall, steep head wall surrounding an armchair-shaped depression. Example, Corrie, Scotland, United Kingdom and Carr in Germany. So when two cirques which are adjacent to each other, when they erode, it results in a rocky steep rock that is called artes. As the ice melt, they filled up with cirque with water and become beautiful lakes in the mountains called as Tarn Lake. When two adjacent cirques erodes towards each other, the previously rounded landscape is transformed into a narrow rocky steep-sided ridge called artes. So, when you explain this question, first you have to explain about Cirque, Tarn Lake and then finally artes. So children, I hope you are clear with this. Now we have come to an end of this revision class. So in case of any doubts, you can refer the 4 session videos related to your unit test 3 portions. The links will be shared to you in the below description. So all the best for your upcoming unit test 3. So children, preparation is the key to success. So preparation is the key for success. So prepare well, study well and do your tests well. Thank you.